Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Legacy Speaks. So I'm going to hit you guys with the blast from the past, okay? Most of y'all who are watching should pretty much be familiar with the hit show House, right? And for those who don't remember, but just to jog your memory a little bit, it's about a brutally honest doctor who treated all of these absurdly insane random diagnoses. A typical episode consisted of a patient coming in with an array of symptoms, and his team of resident doctors would try to decipher what was happening based upon those presenting issues. The problem was, though, the apparent symptoms were never really the true problem. It was always this super rare disorder that was typically the culprit for all of these painstaking issues. Treat the seizures and the patient would be fine until they were literally suffocating in the middle of like a CAT scan or something. And I say this all to say that no matter what you do in life, the presenting issues will not go away unless the underlying problem is addressed. And the same goes for the mental health profession. Oftentimes, I come across people who may be suicidal, depressed, or are chronic substance abusers, and it never fails. A patient or client is typically experiencing something that is causing these emotional, behavioral, or psychological features to manifest. And you all know that I really do love to pair information with my firsthand experiences, and that's pretty much the reason for this channel in the first place. But most of the time, when I'm completing an assessment, I ask the patient what triggered what they're experiencing, when did it start, and if there are any previous history of trauma. And sometimes I have to go into detail because some people don't even know how to define trauma. And by all means, I'm not saying that every person I come across has faced a traumatic experience, but I mean, come on, let's face it. We've all dealt with something that has changed the course of our lives and how we view the world overall. As a mental health professional, I recognize the importance of not only addressing the presenting problem, but also starting to peel back those layers so that we can get to the root of an issue. This is where trauma-informed care comes in. This type of approach has definitely been trending for quite some time now. It is beginning to be heavily incorporated in the way counseling occurs. This is something that I really want to shed light on because it views people from a holistic and socio-cultural perspective, taking into account the way a person's past and present circumstances affects them, as well as their family history, cultural background, and so on, while remaining mindful of trauma in a person's profile. So today we're talking about the effects of trauma and how trauma-informed care makes a huge difference throughout the therapeutic process. But do me a favor though, hit that subscription button below. That way you can stay up to date on newly released content on a regular basis. So let's dive right in. Okay, let's start with the basics. What is trauma? Just to paraphrase SAMHSA's definition, it is a distress response to an event or set of circumstances that can either be life-threatening or emotionally and physically devastating to an individual. This can lead to lasting adverse effects on the way a person functions, as well as their mental, physical, social, emotional, or even spiritual well-being. Trauma can be classified as either being naturally caused or human caused. The earthquake that took place in Haiti in 2010, the wildfires in California, as well as hurricanes Katrina and Irma are examples of naturally caused traumatization. Human-caused traumatic instances can range from mass shootings to physical or sexual abuse. All of these examples, whether experienced in person or vicariously, cause some type of emotional and or psychological distress, and it impacts people's overall functionality or specific aspects of their life. And the reason why I say vicariously is because yes, trauma can occur without experiencing it firsthand. As a matter of fact, you could be traumatized and not even realize it. For example, there were reports showing how people all over the country experienced secondary trauma from constantly listening to the news stations as they recounted the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. An increased desire for protection, heightened sense of fear or anxiety regarding key details pertaining to such devastating events, as well as changes in sleeping and eating patterns and so on, are just a few of the characteristics that were reported and seen. But let me catch myself and stay on track. There are a number of key definitions and terms that are definitely noteworthy regarding this topic, but rather than going over all of them, I will go ahead and include the links in the description box below. That way you can definitely just click on those resources. So you better use them, okay? It took me a while to find them. Now onto trauma-informed care. The goal is to complete the 4 R's. Realize, recognize, respond, and resist. It's important to realize that there are systematic effects of trauma and that it not only impacts the person, but their families, communities, places of employment, organizations, and other social spheres. The ability to recognize the signs of trauma and understanding that these can be gender specific, circumstantial, or even age related is crucial. I just wanted to point out that this is why shedding light on trauma and trauma-informed care is so important, because it not only pushes for mental health professionals to improve their skills, but it also encourages the general public to be able to pick up on these signs of trauma within their friends, family, co-workers, and so on. From there, the responsibility to respond is heightened, because what's knowledge without application, right? We can definitely advocate for those who have experienced trauma by improving policies, implementing evidence-based practices, and also attending and creating trainings to improve the way we help survivors of trauma. Please keep in mind that the goal is to resist re-traumatization. That means we can operate from a standpoint that doesn't lead to the individual becoming triggered or experiencing distress from reliving these traumatic memories. There are 6 principal factors to trauma-informed approach, and these include safety, trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice and choice, and cultural, historical, and gender issues. And for me, I can attest to the importance of these key factors, and I want to bring it home for you guys. Some of you who are watching might have experienced some level of trauma in your life, so look at these principles in relation to your specific situation. One of the highest priorities for a survivor of trauma is to make sure that this doesn't happen again. For anyone who's been through something, being in a place of vulnerability is definitely a no-go and is extremely uncomfortable. There is a desire to ensure that your well-being will not be compromised ever again. We may not be able to guarantee that though, but establishing safety not only within your environment but among people you can trust and be authentically open with is so paramount. This can be established through a support group of individuals who can relate to what we have experienced, or at least can help show us better ways to cope with what has happened. And in return, helping provide that same level of support and understanding to others is very crucial. Also, many individuals do not want to be seen as a victim. Going back to that vulnerability piece, 9 times out of 10, a person in the midst of a life-altering situation felt helpless and out of control. With time, an individual will begin to take their power back as they become empowered to use their voice to advocate for themselves and others. One thing that I truly like about trauma-informed care is the fact that it causes us to shift our perspective from a stance of what is wrong with the person to, dang, what happened to them? Like I mentioned before, presenting issues will not go away unless the underlying problem is addressed. Come on now, like you can put 1,000,001 band-aids over an infection, but if the bacteria is not eliminated, then the sore will continue to fester without seeing the light of day. As a matter of fact, you can take a number of illicit prescription drugs or medications, but if you continue to try to hide or avoid those deep emotions, you'll just end up worse off. So please guys, do not suffer in silence. Please don't suffer in silence. And for helping professionals, as a matter of fact, this can go for friends and families as well. It's important to not pressure a person into talking about their traumatic experiences. It is our responsibility to empower the client or patient to reprocess these instances on their own terms. Pay attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues while remaining empathetic and placing safety as a top priority. Try to incorporate psychological first aid, grounding techniques, mindfulness, as well as deep breathing exercises too. Also consider providing additional information about trauma, what it can look like, and how it can affect a person physically and emotionally, because not everybody is aware of it. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Legacy Speaks. I really hope that this has been helpful as well as insightful. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And let's keep the conversation going. What do you think about trauma-informed care? How can counselors increase their mindfulness about their clients' traumas? Don't forget that January is Mental Health Awareness Month, so all month long I will be pumping out a number of resources and tips regarding mental health. So check them out in the description box below and stay connected via Legacy SBKS on everything. Until next time.